So ang papag-usapan po natin ngayong gabi is yung pag-order po ni PBBM na mag-submit ng mga courtesy resignation po yung cabinet secretaries niya. So kung makita po natin yan dito all across multiple media platforms po natin na balita na po talaga yan, GMA, ABS, and umabot na nga rin po sa international sa ABC News. Okay, so yan po yung papag-usapan natin. I-explain ko po sa inyo kung ano yung courtesy resignation, kung ano yung mga possible issues nitong action si BBM, at kung meron ba tong epekto po sa government natin. Tapos magbibigay din po tayo or magko-konting maritesan din po pala tayo kung saan magbibigay ako ng personal review ko po dun sa mga iilang well-known cabinet secretaries. Okay, so good everybody. This is AttorNEIL Abayon po, your quote-unquote favorite DDS lawyer. So for today po, yan yung i-explain ko sa inyong lahat. Okay, pero bago po tayo mag-start, konting update lang po tayo, channel update. Currently po, we're already at 229,000 subscribers. Parang kailan lang po kaka 200,000 lang natin. So sa lahat po ng bagong subscribers dito, welcome po kayong lahat. Hopefully po mag-enjoy kayo dito at may matutunan po kayo sa channel ko, okay? At sa mga old subscribers ko po, as usual, wag po natin kalimutan i-welcome yung mga bago at tandaan din po natin, wag tayo mang-away po ng mga hindi natin kasundo regarding political affiliations or yung mga political ideologies, okay? Tandaan po natin, this is a legal educational video, so focus lang po tayo sa issue na pinapag-usapan natin, okay? At isa pa po gusto ko lang i-announce sa 200,000 subscriber milestone po, hindi na natin na-celebrate kasi sobrang bilis po ng mga pangyayari lately. So anyway po, magsischedule na lang ako ng celebration for that. Magla-live stream po tayo ulit kung saan magkakwentuhan lang tayo and we will discuss mga legal issues po sa bansa natin and any other legal question po na meron kayo. Okay, so abangan nyo na lang po yan sa Facebook ko. Gagawa na lang po ako ng post for the schedule. Tapos kita-kits po tayo sa live stream one of these days. Okay, ngayon start na po tayo sa discussion natin. So para po mas madali yung discussion natin, gumawa na naman po ako nito ng question and answer natin para at least dire-diretso po yung usapan, okay? So unang-una po, ang question na nilagay ko dito is what is a courtesy resignation? So yung courtesy resignation po, that is a form of resignation kung saan po yung isang tao, which in this case po is a cabinet secretary, magsasubmit po siya ngayon ng resignation out of courtesy dun sa amo niya or sa presidente po in this case para mabigyan ng chance mag-reorganize yung amo po niya or yung presidente, okay? At kaya po siya may word talaga na courtesy kasi it is out of courtesy po, parang sariling kagustuhan yun nung cabinet secretary na mag-submit para nga mabigyan ng chance mag-reorganize yung presidente. Again, tandaan po ninyo, ang important po na word dito is yung word na courtesy kasi yun nga, it is out of courtesy or out of own free will nung cabinet secretary para mabigyan ng chance mag-reorganize po yung presidente, okay? Ngayon, ang next question naman po natin, is there an issue on the action of the president in asking his cabinet secretaries to submit their courtesy resignation? Okay? Bago po tayo mag-continue guys, this is the portion of the video where I just have a quick reminder to everyone. Okay? So nakikita niyo naman po siguro dito sa gilid. So kung titingnan po ninyo for the last 90 days po, sa YouTube channel ko po to, na analytics, ang nanonood po sa akin is not subscribed 80%. At ang nakasubscribe lang po sa akin, na nanonood sa akin is only 19%. So ang question po natin dito, ano po ba yung nangyari dito sa 80%? Why have you not subscribed po? Is it because triggered kayo dun sa quote-unquote DDS joke ko? So tandaan po ninyo, that is a joke ha. Kaya nga po may quote-unquote kasi hindi naman po ako yung tumawag sa sarili ko nun. There are other people who started calling me that because puro daw pabor kay Duterte. So ginawa ko na lang siyang joke sa intro, di ba? So yung mga DDS side natuwa naman, pero yung hindi DDS mukhang mas lalong nainis po sa akin eh. Pero again, I would just like to emphasize that it's just a joke lang po para at least pang pang icebreaker po sa community. So again, just a quick reminder lang po, if you are part of this 80%, if you enjoyed my video po, kung may natutunan kayo or kung nakailang nood na po kayo kahit ayaw nyo sa akin, sana man po makonsider nyo mag-subscribe para at least po mas mag-widen pa yung reach po ng channel natin at mas madami pang makakita ng content po natin. Okay? Ngayon tuloy po tayo sa discussion natin. Kung ako po tatanungin, meron pong issue doon kung yung amo or yung presidente is mag-uutos or magdadirect sa cabinet secretaries yan ang mag-submit ng courtesy resignation. Okay? Kasi by the very definition po kasi of a courtesy resignation, like what I explained earlier, it is out of courtesy nga po, di ba? Meaning out of respect, out of his own free will, magsasubmit siya nun. Eh ang problem po ngayon, kung inutusan ka po mag-submit ng resignation letter mo, is that still a courtesy resignation po ba? Di ba? Medyo dun po magkaka-problem kasi it defeats the very essence and purpose of the word courtesy. Kasi hindi na po yan siya out of your own free will mangyayari pag inutusan kayo. kayo eh. What you are doing now is a observance of a command or of a directive po ng presidente. Kung ako po tatanungin, yun lang naman yung possible issue sa nakikita ko po doon. Okay? Wala naman talaga to siyang major issue na makaapekto sa bansa po natin or sa mga legalities. Pero as a lawyer po kasi, we are very mindful of specific terms, specific words. Kaya shinare ko lang po yan dito kasi yun nga, yung act po na idadirect or utusan mo na mag-submit ng resignation, dun pa lang po that already defeats the very essence and purpose of the term courtesy resignation. Because again, this is supposed to be out of own free will ng cabinet secretary, ng employee, out of respect or courtesy dun sa amo niya. Pero yun nga po, kung meron ng direction or utos, nawala na dun yung voluntariness, diba? It is now a compliance po to an order or a directive, therefore defeating the very essence of what we call a courtesy resignation. Okay? So yan po yung personal observation ko on this action po ni PBBM. So ngayon, ang next question naman po natin, what is the effect upon submission of the cabinet secretary's resignation letter? So ang epekto po niyan is hindi po siya automatically resigned, okay? Hindi po yan siya ganon. Kasi tatandaan po natin in resignation letters, kailangan pa rin po yan tanggapin or i-accept nung amo, which in this case is the president, diba? Therefore, prior to any acceptance of the resignation letter by the president, hindi pa po umeepekto talaga yung resignation na sinabmit po ng cabinet secretary. So at present po, wala pa naman po tayong nababalitaan na may mga tinanggap na si PBBM na mga resignation letters. Therefore, yung mga cabinet secretaries pong nag-submit, they are still the actual cabinet secretaries po of their department. Okay? Okay, so tandaan po natin in summary, unless and until PBBM accepts the resignation of the cabinet secretaries, they are still considered as the secretaries po nung departments nila. Okay? Ngayon, ang next question po natin, number 4. What will happen to the government? Will it not lead to a collapse? So hindi ko lang po nalagay dito, pero yung point ko po dito, what will happen to the government assuming na let's say tinanggap ni PBBM lahat ng resignation letter sabay-sabay, will that not lead to a collapse po ba ng government? Okay, at ang sagot po dyan is hindi naman po yan magko-collapse yung government structure natin. Kasi tatandaan po natin yung departments, they are only headed by the cabinet secretaries, okay? However, yung mga cabinet secretaries po yan, meron naman po yan silang mga subordinates, which is yung mga undersecretaries, yung mga assistant secretaries, okay? Therefore, one of those subordinates, more or less po under, or one of the undersecretaries, yan po ngayon yung magiging tinatawag na acting secretary, okay? So again, klaruhin ko lang po, hindi po magko-collapse yung government kahit na po sabay-sabayan tanggapin ni PBBM yung resignation letters, okay? Magkakaroon lang po yan ngayon ng acting secretary either dun sa mga undersecretaries or sa mga assistant secretary. So ito po, punto na tayo sa last question natin before po tayo magmaritesan, okay? So number 5, what is better? Asking for a courtesy resignation or the president directly removing the cabinet secretary, okay? So ito po, this will be all based on my personal, personal opinion ko lang to. This is not a legal opinion, not a professional assessment. Rather, my personal opinion po as a person who was a former member of Congress, who comes from a political family. In short, meron po akong political, in a way, parang may konting political background from actual experience, okay? So ako po tatanungin dito kung ano mas maganda, maghingi ba ng resignation or tanggalin directly. I will choose the latter po if it was me, which means na mas maganda po na directly inform yung cabinet secretary na tanggalin na siya. Kasi kung tatandaan po natin, based on the news articles I've read, the reason kung bakit to ginawa ni PBBM yung action ngayon is because daw the people have spoken after the midterm elections, kung saan ang dating daw po kay PBBM is hindi happy yung tao kaya gusto niya daw ayusin talaga ng maayos yung government na niya, okay? So kung dito po ginawa niya directly tinanggal sana at hindi na humingi ng resignation, dun pa lang po makikita agad ng people na may initiative talaga yung presidente natin na palitan yung mga underperforming or yung not performing ng maayos na mga secretaries. Kasi yung problem kasi kung hihingi ka lang po ng resignation letter, parang nakukulangan sa action, 'di ba? Whereas pag sabihin mo tanggal ka na, yung dating po nun sa tao mas parang powerful, 'di ba? Kasi nakikita natin na proactive po talaga yung presidente. Siya mismo yung directly nag-utos tanggalin yung certain individuals who are not performing well. Compared nga doon na humingi ka lang ganyan, mag-submit tapos review pa. So in short, parang mas hindi direct to the point yung gusto natin mangyari. So if it was me po, it would have been better to directly remove na lang yung mga underperforming. Kasi from there, may kita natin na may action talaga yung president and that he himself is very proactive. Siya mismo, ni-review niya na lahat yung mga underperforming secretaries. So from that action po, mas magkakaroon ng impact sa public. So again, tandaan po natin, these are all my personal opinion regarding po whether or not what is better, humingi ba ng resignation or directly tanggalin or i-fire mo na lang ba yung mga hindi mo gustong secretary. Okay? So ngayon, punta na po tayo sa maritesan portion of the video. Okay, ito na po yung favorite favorite ng mga taga-Facebook, maritesan. So, unang-una po tingnan natin si Lucas Bersamin, Executive Secretary. He has submitted his resignation letter. And yung status is submitted. Nasa ano po pala to? Inquirer.net. So, when I recorded this was uploaded 47 minutes ago. So, siguro try ko na lang i-share yung link nito sa post para at least ma-review din po ninyo. Okay? So, si Lucas Bersamin, ano po siya ngayon eh? Medyo tumahimik po kung napansin nyo ever since na-appoint yung PCO and then ever since si Atty. Claire Castro naging parang spokesperson na ni PBBM. Si ES Bersamin medyo nag-died down. Yun yung observation ko lang po ever since na-establish ng maayos yung PCO. So ngayon, kung ano naman sa performance-wise, wala akong masabi anything negative about ES Bersamin because he is very quiet na po. So yeah, I think it would be best na iwan na lang po natin yan kay PBBM since ano naman niya yan close in talaga niya yung Executive Secretary. Okay? So anyway, ngayon next po tayo Secretary of Agriculture si Laurel. Wala pa po tayo masyadong naririnig din dito. Yung last ng Secretary sa Department of Agriculture is yung 20 peso rice, diba? Pero ano pa po yun, di pa talaga na-implement ng maayos. But overall, the Secretary of Agriculture, the Department of Agriculture is a low profile, ano lang din po, department. Same with Secretary of Education, si Secretary Sani Angara, very low profile lang din po ngayon. Mukhang performing naman siya, wala naman tayong issues na naririnig sa kanya. At ngayon next po sa Secretary of Finance. O ngayon po, ito medyo may problem po tayo dito or may mga naririnig po tayong issues. Kasi kung tatandaan po natin, of course, yung Secretary of Finance tapos yung Department of Budget, yan very very much involved po talaga yan sa finance, sa budget ng bansa po natin. So si Ralph Recto, madami to siyang unpopular statements lately, di ba? One of which is yung gusto nila taasan yung, I believe, capital gains tax yun. Pero binawi din naman nila. Nonetheless, the damage has been done, nalabas na out there sa public yung statement. So yung public ngayon medyo nagka-idea na gusto taasan ng admin ngayon yung capital gains. Okay? So again, tandaan po ninyo itong sinasabi ko is in relation po to dun sa objective ni PBBM kung saan kaya daw niya pinasubmit ng mga resignation letter para mag-revamp, diba? Para mas pagandahin yung services and of course, yung effect po niyan is mas magustuhan ng tao, mas tumaas yung approval rating. So si Secretary Ralph Recto, unfortunately, he has made some actions and made some statements na unpopular po to the public. One of which nga, like I said, is yung capital gains tax na gusto taasan. Tapos yung pagbenta rin po pala ng gold, yun, yung timing yun. Grabe din po yung mga information drive against that na I personally believe nakasira din po talaga sa image nung administration ni PBBM. Okay? Secretary of Trade and Industry, wala din po tayong masabi dyan. Si Secretary Rex Gatchalian, wala din naman talaga tayong masabi sa kanya. Although merong mga complaints before may committee hearing na heavily politicized daw tong DSWD, especially pag hindi kaalyado nila Speaker Romualdez ng admin yung pag-release ng funds. So kung tatandaan po ninyo, may Senate hearing yan before. I think it was si Senator Bongo yung nag-spearhead nun. And then dito din po yung lahat, yung AKAP, yung AIX na mga programs. So those are highly controversial ayuda programs po yun under this department. So si Secretary Rex Gatchalian, overall naman ito siya, maayos yung reputation niya as a person, 'di ba? As a former mayor and congressman po ng Valenzuela. But because of those high controversial ayuda programs, doon po ngayon naapektuhan yung image ng DSWD. So ito po, I think posible tong tanggapin ni PBBM considering everything. Pero yun nga po yung nagpondo naman kasi talaga ng AKAP, ng AIX, ng mga ayuda programs na yan is not necessarily the DSWD but the Congress po yan yung nagpopondo. Tas yung implementing arm lang is yung DSWD. Pero nonetheless, they are parang they heavily work together yung programs po na yun. So I think ito posible itong tanggapin ni PBBM. Okay? And Secretary of Labor, wala din po tayong masyadong issue sa labor currently. Agrarian Reform, wala rin po tayong masyadong naririnig. Human Settlement, wala rin po tayong masyadong naririnig na mga housing issues naman. So yung sinasabi ko po dito, these are just my personal opinion na lang po to. Kaya nga po maritesan yung sabi ko okay? Hindi na po to me acting as a lawyer, as a legal expert on the matter. Hindi po yan ganun. However, in-explain ko lang sa inyo kanina po yung experience ko sa political side of things as a former politician, public servant, and coming from a family who also served in the government sector before. Okay? But anyway, Secretary of Tourism, this is the wife po or the daughter po to ni Governor Gwen Garcia of Cebu. So kung sa tourism lang, sa performance ni Secretary Frasco, yung pinaka naging issue lang sa kanya before yung pag-release nung yung Love Philippines na video nung una pa, yung kaka-start pa lang halos nung term ni PBBM, kung saan may lumabas na yung mga videos pala doon is yung galing sa mga platform na may yung may mga B-roll na nagbebenta ng B-roll, may ilang clips doon na doon lang kinuha. So yun lang naman yung naging issue, but aside from that parang wala naman na talaga tayong narinig from the Secretary Department of Tourism na issues. Okay? So Hans Leo Kakdak, wala rin po tayo masyadong naririnig. I mean ako po wala akong napapansin. So ngayon punta po tayo sa next. Ito po medyo controversial to sa Department of Justice, si Secretary Boying Remulla. So kung tatandaan po natin, one of the reasons, o ako po personal observation ko talaga, the major reason or most likely the major reason kung bakit nasira po talaga yung approval ratings sa PBBM is more or less po dahil nung pag-surrender nila kay FPRRD sa The Hague talaga. Yun yung nag-start talaga na ang dami ng issues lumabas, tapos sunod-sunod yung surveys nun, pababa ng pababa yung trend nung popularity po ni PBBM. And then yung problem lang po dito ni Secretary Boying, in the Senate hearing po ni Senator Amy Marcos, di ba inamin po doon ni Secretary Boying na siya yung nagbigay ng go signal para doon sa procedure na sinunod nila. So kung ako po tatanungin, most likely baka posible po itong tanggapin ni PBBM yung resignation talaga ni Secretary Boying. Because again, tandaan po natin, this part po of my discussion is based on the reorganization efforts of PBBM in relation dun nga sa pagbaba ng approval ratings niya and due to the election results kung saan medyo hindi favorable sa admin. So again, clarify ko lang din po ulit, si Secretary Boying kasi was the one who was heavily involved in the surrender of FPRRD to The Hague, to ICC, and ako yung personal observation ko po talaga, yung pag-surrender kay FPRRD yung isa sa naka-apekto talaga sa approval ratings po ng admin. So again, si Secretary Boying po pwede po to tanggapin ni PBBM yung resignation letter niya in my opinion. Okay? And then si Secretary Manalo, Foreign Affairs, wala lang din naman po, tahimik lang. Herbosa, Secretary of Health, wala din po tayong narinig. Ito ngayon, controversial na naman po, si Secretary Gibo Teodoro of the Department of National Defense. So si Secretary Gibo, he was also mentioned by Secretary John Vic. Si Secretary John Vic po pala yung next. Pero anyway, isabay na natin i-discuss sila, si Secretary Teodoro and Secretary John Vic of the DILG. So ito po silang dalawa, according to Secretary John Vic dun sa interview po niya, I believe it was in the Billionaire News Channel, ni-name drop po ni Secretary John Vic si Secretary Teodoro na involved din dun sa yung pag-process ng pag-surrender. So in short, ito sila, si Sec John Vic, Sec Teodoro, si Sec Boying, they were the ones who were involved in the surrender of FPRRD. So more or less po, mataas chance baka tanggapin to ni PBBM because again, in my opinion po, yung pag-surrender kay FPRRD yung isa talaga sa major reasons kung bakit bumaba yung approval ratings ni PBBM. Okay? And klaruhin ko lang din po although si Secretary John Vic Remulla, dun po sa Senate hearing ni Senator Amy, di ba kinlarify niya na iba daw yung point niya dun sa word na group effort. Hindi daw yun siya ganun talaga yung gusto niya ibig sabihin. May iba siyang inexplain dun sa Senate hearing. Yung problem lang po dun, nung sinagot po lahat ni Secretary John Vic yung mga sinabi niya dun sa interview, iba po yung pagka-interpret ng public di ba? So from there, since nasabi niya na yun in public, nalabas niya na lahat nung point of view niya on the matter, na-absorb na nung public basically yung information, yung point ko po. So nung na-absorb na po nung public, doon na ngayon nagkaroon ng interpretation din yung public as to the issue or as to the answers po of Secretary John Vic on that interview, in that interview, okay? Although yun nga, question yun ni Secretary John Vic na iba daw yung point niya, but again, the damage has been done. It was already put out there in the public, tas nagkaroon na ng kanya-kanyang interpretations yung public as to his answers in relation to the overall yung nangyari sa pag-surrender kay FPRRD. Okay? So yung next po is si Secretary Anyo ng National Security Advisor. So same po to silang tatlo, silang apat because they were the ones who was name drop po by Secretary John Vic in relation dun sa pag-surrender kay FPRRD. So I think mataas yung chance na posibleng tanggapin talaga ni PBBM to yung mga resignation letter po nila. Okay? And yung next po is si Secretary Vince Dizon. So si Secretary Dizon of the DOTR, sobrang bago pa lang po to niya, 'di ba? I believe February lang ba or March siya na-appoint. Tapos ngayon, nag-submit na rin siya ng resignation letter because of the directive of PBBM. So ako po personally, yung observation ko dito kay Secretary Dizon, he is parang para siyang action man din, di ba? Ang dami niyang interviews, ang dami niyang press cons where he is trying to address mga transportation issues, like yung sa Laglag-Bala, nagpa-press con siya for that, tapos pumunta rin siya dun sa, I believe sa Siargao yun, yung tinuturo niya yung airport na may mga issues. So mukhang naman to siya, proactive naman si Secretary Dizon. Pero yun nga, unfortunately, he was also required to submit upon the order order of or the directive po of PBBM. Pero ako po personally, si Secretary Dizon mukhang okay naman. Maganda yung performance niya so far. And then, yung iba po isi-skip ko na lang tapos tingnan na lang natin yung medyo, medyo controversial. Hindi ko pa nakita yung sa DBM eh. Kita kong medyo controversial din po is yung sa DBM. Unfortunately, si Secretary Pangandaman because of the 2025 budget po, diba? So, sa 2025 budget po, it is not only the group of PRRD or it is not only the group of FPRRD who is questioning or labeling that budget as the most corrupt, but also the side of the liberals, diba? Si former Senator, former Senate President Franklin Drilon, he has already spoken on the matter calling it one of the most corrupt budgets din daw na nakita niya. Tapos si incoming Senator Ping Lacson, nagsalita rin siya against that na yun nga po, corrupt talaga. So in short, yung point ko lang po, yung 2025 budget po talaga is highly controversial, diba? Therefore, most likely po, naka-contribute din talaga yun sa pagbaba po ng approval ratings ni PBBM. So kung ako po tatanungin, naka-apekto po yun sa approval ratings si PBBM, in my opinion lang po to most likely tatanggapin din po ni PBBM tong kay Secretary Pangandaman, assuming mag-file po siya or mag-submit din siya ng resignation letter niya, okay? And then, yung isa pa pong controversial dito, si Solgen Guevara. So si Solgen Guevara po, he is also very active, pero yung mga ina-actionan po niya ngayon is yung mga relation dun sa mga sa mga kakampi po ni FPRRD, yung mga cases na highlight po ng media ngayon, like yung kay incoming Congresswoman, former Senator De Lima, yung kaso pong final nila Guevara, yung petition for certiorari. May video rin po ako about that actually. So yun po, inakyat nila sa CA, tapos yung CA dineclare as null and void yung acquittal. So kung makikita natin, si OSG Guevara po si Solgen Guevara po is very active naman. However, yung pag-active lang niya is baka hindi in line masyado dun sa direction po ba ng admin ni PBBM. So I personally believe there is a chance na tanggapin din ni PBBM yung resignation nito ni Solgen Guevara kung mag-submit po siya. Kasi despite him doing his work, medyo hindi masyado in line with the direction of the admin if you ask me, like yung sa petition for habeas corpus ng mga anak ni FPRRD against the government, doon hindi rin po siya nag-participate because according to him, yung position daw ng government is, yung position daw ng OSG as the public defender has been consistent na wala talagang jurisdiction yung ICC, therefore ayaw na niya mag-participate doon sa habeas corpus. So again, active siya but medyo hindi in line with the direction of the admin. So I personally believe may chance na tatanggapin po to ni PBBM yung resignation letter niya. And then for everyone else naman po na wala tayong masyadong naririnig about, yun yung problem. Kung hindi natin sila naririnig sa media, wala tayong nakikita, baka wala po masyadong accomplishment report unfortunately. Okay? So eto si Secretary Bonoan of the DPWH, yung one issue lang dito is yung sa bridge na nag-collapse sa Isabela. So yun lang naman yung controversial so far. And then yung flood control din po pala, yung mga flood control projects yun, naging very highly controversial din po yun. Yun yung isa sa mga ginamit at pinukpok talaga ng mga ng mga FPRRD supporters to show na hindi gumagana yung flood controls, lalo na nung kaka-announce lang ni PBBM sa SONA, biglang yun binaha tayo unfortunately because there were typhoons sa bansa po natin. So yun yung isang issue din po na medyo highly controversial that most likely also affected the approval ratings of PBBM. Okay? So kung gusto nyo po ng maritesan videos, meron din akong video yung posibleng epekto po ng results ng 2025 senatorial election sa impeachment ni VP Sara. Okay? So yan, maritesan din po ulit yun. Ilalagay ko na lang po sa gilid ng mukha ko yung video para at least po mapanood ninyo. Okay? Pero for today, hanggang dyan lang po muna yung discussion natin. Hopefully klaro yun. And if you like legal educational videos sa current events, follow lang po kayo sa akin sa social media. Until next time, see you all po. Bye-bye! Good night!